Okay, and in conclusion, we're going to listen to the last bit of your wrap-up, and which you talk about samples, DNA, and other things, and let's see which one is more likely, considering all the things that we've talked about, I've considered before. Let's listen to what you have to say. And let's let the people who respond to this video give you some examples and some insights or ideas of where you might want to take the revision of this video at, or to. Okay, let's listen.
Okay, and lastly, the last thing that scientists argue when they are trying to say it's contaminated, they'll argue that it hasn't been reproduced. The experiments haven't been reproduced. And when I'm thinking about that, it seems like this is a bogus argument because we have 15 samples, which I passed around with pictures of them, so that is reproducibility. It has been reproduced in various different labs, and including specimens, the individual specimens, 5 of these, have all been reproduced from different laboratories, and they've used negative controls so that the DNA, in order for it to be contaminated, the DNA would have to get on only the samples with the bees, but not on the ones with the negative controls. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's a probabilistic thing, and it's a cumulative argument. We have 15 different samples, so the real question that we should ask is it likely that all 15 samples that we have were all contaminated? And I don't think that's probable at all. So yeah, that's the DNA. There's also some protein. There's other additional problems that scientists have when they find proteins in dinosaurs, such as the Siasmosaurus, 150 million years old, or they find protein in 80 million year old mollusks or 144 million year old oysters. The same problem is, first of all, they don't use PCR, they use other tests that show that the protein is actually there and it's not a contaminant. And second of all, so far as I've read in the scientific literature, the DNA and protein survive about the same time. So the question is it a contaminant? Is it surviving that long, or is the world actually not that old as scientists think that it is based on radiometric dating? And yeah, in conclusion, I would say I think it's the DNA and the protein findings definitely support the world being very young. So yeah, guess we can do questions if anybody has.
Yeah, I got one. When they find, remember I was talking about all those sediments? And they find these samples buried in a certain layer of these sediments that date to a certain date using several independent tests, and then it collaborates with the geology and what they predict of the biology, because you've got to think, science is all about models. That's why they call them theories, because they're not a, well, it might be true kind of thing. It's like, this is a predictive model that most closely fits the facts as we can predict them and reproduce them. So, when something like a mollusk is stuck in a layer of dirt that's in a cliffside with several sedimentary layers, so that show that, like, for example, it was a sea at one time, and that dried up, and the mollusk got stuck in it and dried up as well, or had died and settled in the sea bottom, and then it dried up. And they both date about the same, including all the DNA and stuff you're talking about that probably wouldn't have DNA anymore, what I'm talking about. How do you explain that as a young Earth creationist? I'm just curious. I don't know. I mean, I could listen to the scientific explanation, and to be honest, I listened to scientific explanation that they told me was completely true, and then they realized it was completely wrong. That's always an amazing thing. But yet I wouldn't ask myself if that could be how could you say it? That could be a contributing factor to the presence of a supernatural presence. But yeah, tell me about the mollusk and the sedimentary layers, because we've already established sedimentary layers. And we've already established dating for various things. So, how does the young Earth creationist fit into that? Just curious. And let's hear the last little bit. I thought it was interesting.
No question?
It's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information, yeah.
How long did you work on that for?
It was sort of on and off between black ops matches. But yeah, probably a couple weeks or something.
So, I'm bored.
Okay. I guess he was bored. I personally found it kind of interesting. And I hope you did too. This is Curious. Over and out. Hang tough, Zack.